as a quality worker and as a director among many other roles. He was active in the early days of Minceir Misli and was instrumental in campaigning for the Equal Status Act and the Traveller Accommodation Act. Thomas holds a diploma in community development.
About your life,
yeah.
And either kind of, and it can get, it can get worse as well, it can, and who decides, and it's who decides, the power holders decide how things are, policies are. I mean, if you talk about, we talked about the trespass legislation a couple of minutes ago, that was a decision that was made by politicians. Or maybe you'd say, had we been strong enough, we might have been able to shift that in some way. We did try at the time. I remember I was very involved, and we tried to get a challenge in the courts. The council estate wouldn't send it to the court. I remember delivering up to Oris and Uchtron the argument to have it challenged in the courts from the ITM, and the council estate turned it down because it was because we felt it was unconstitutional at the time. But if we don't challenge them decisions, if we don't kind of get organised and collectively come together to challenge that, then any decisions can be made without any opposition at all. So, you either accept the way things are and the possibility of getting worse, or else you kind of
just ways to get involved.
Absolutely.
And support. A lot of things can happen. Any well-meaning community do not create ideology or understand some of the issues.
Well, I think it's really important because, if you're talking about employment, if you're talking about education, if you're talking about accommodation, if you're talking about any of them issues, it's really important that people understand that the more of a say we have in that, the better they are. That's the key thing. If we don't have any say in that, and then people can make decisions about our lives that we have no control over at all. And that idea that it's never going to change, actually, that's not necessarily true. And I've been involved for a long time. Things do change. There's a whole set of circumstances that's going on. I mean, you try and influence them, but they do change. The only thing that's certain is change. It mightn't be good or bad change, but the only thing that's constant is change. We don't stay in the same place. We don't kind of, and we need to kind of shape that. That needs to be shaped. Now, do we want to be part of shaping that, or do we just stand on the sidelines watching it being shaped by somebody else but affecting us? That's the choice we make. But it's like a kind of, it's like anything, either you can look on at the thing and give out about it, and I think, that's what people feel, that they can shape the change.
Malcolm X was saying something to that effect, we're once there too.
Absolutely. We all were.
It might doing something quite sillyish, if anything else.
Yeah.
But when you get understanding of what they're actually doing,
you
realise what an important thing that they're doing.
Absolutely.
And your view completely changes what they're doing and how you see them and how you do.
Absolutely. But the thing is this, is that it's like a journey, any journey. Every journey has to start. You're never going to get anywhere down the road on that journey. But what I'm saying to you is this. Is that it's like any journey, it has to start. If we don't start a journey, and I'm talking about the journey to change the way we want it to change, and that can start with the smallest step. It doesn't have to be jumping in at the deep end and becoming part of a national campaign. It can be the smallest step, but the journey has started, and that empowers us. Once we start that journey, that empowers. And as I said earlier on, when we start to do something about whatever the circumstances is, we begin to take control. And I think that's really important for people.
I know sometimes they do a bit of chopping.
Same about mental health. Doing something about your own mental health. Once you start that journey, actually that empowers you to change things for yourself.
Absolutely, economical states, whatever it might be. But nevertheless, them has a process where it can become affected and mental issues or mental health become it can become something that needs to be looked at or worked on. What was not just another traveller or counselling service. Is there any ways other than approaching the 9 to 5, or is there sort of a website or something?
Yeah, there is. I think people can, and I think it depends on. There's also a generation thing here as well. There's a lot of younger people, for instance, has iPhone, and there's a lot of information on websites about, simple things, simple steps actually that can help you with your mental health. That can help you to do that. For the older generation, I think phone lines might be a good way. There is kind of counselling phone lines that people can ring up and
eyeball the modern apps.
Yeah, very good, very good. And we'll have to develop some for travellers. But anyway, that any traveller could use. But I think there is. But I think ringing up somebody that somebody's trusted and just saying, listen, kind of for acknowledging that there's an issue, that there's something that needs being able to manage their everyday life that starts to impact on people. People has. We all kind of at different times feel very challenged by issues, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we do need a bit of support. And it's like we sometimes don't want to show that we're weak, or that other people might perceive us as weak. It's about kind of saying to somebody, listen, look, how do I get out of this space, or how do I kind of change this? And we do that about other things. We do that about anything else.
Absolutely.
And travellers in like for generations, for centuries, is very good at problem solving. Has been very good problem solvers. And if you look at, and I think, but we need to apply that to mental health issues. When I say mental health, it could be like somebody that's really stressed about their son or their daughter, or it could be about a whole range of things.
That's right.
And if we can deal with them things, it's less likely that it builds into a bigger issue.
But this is the other thing, Thomas, is that you could very possibly have mental health concern.
Yeah.
And not being in the back of your mind that you can't bring to the forefront, but there's something there.
Yeah.
So that's what I said to you, there could be deep rooted, even childhood events that come up into adult life.
Yeah.
They might manifest car, or because the bills or packing or stacking up. There could be an underlying...
There can be as well. I mean, some things... Now, I mean, the medical model would tell us that would suggest that everything is organic. Everything is within the individual. If something's gone wrong, However, the social model, and I think this is hard sometimes for people to get their head around, because if we only kind of understand it from the medical model, then the answer is medication. Yeah. Whereas we need to look at it from a social model as well, from social change, in terms of, as we talked about earlier on, some of the things that's impacting, that creating that stressful situation. But I wanted to go back to two things. One was, of course, shame is the big issue, but fear is another issue. When we start to feel kind of...
not the fear of the shame, is it?
Well, the shame is one thing.
Right.
Yeah? That's shame about kind of other people knowing about us, about kind of, being seen as weak, all of that. That's one thing. But the fear, and there's different levels of this fear. Fear stops us from doing something about circumstances a lot of the time. That the fear, sometimes, if we feel that kind of, if it's personally, that there's something wrong with us, there's a fear sometimes of kind of acknowledging that's something, that it could be, that we could be losing kind of part of ourselves,
of course,
or we're changing, and we don't want to, for the family, it's sometimes a fear of acknowledging that, to make it real, because by acknowledging it, we're giving it more credence, or not, and I don't, and so we try to ignore it or pass it off, or kind of, say it'll be all right, that can be good, but we need to acknowledge, we need to say, look, the anxiety then around it.
Strength or weakness, or you're strong to talk about it, or you're weak to talk about it. Which way do you want to measure it? Top-notch athletes.
Yeah.
Some of the serious athletes who are openly talking about mental health issues.
Because a lot of them has been affected by it. If you look at, if you look at boxing, for instance, there was a chap there in London who took his own life. An Irish boxer,
right.
And a few years ago, and I remember it well, and many others, and some of them kind of didn't end up taking their own lives, but a lot of athletes can be, and indeed other personalities as well, whether it's musicians or kind of well-known people, are affected by mental health as well, and someone who has come out and talked about it. Brezzi, for instance, talks about it a lot, and many others, But I think this thing that...
I think it's good we are talking about it.
I think it is, and I think there's more focus on it. We are focusing more on it. But we need to look at, kind of making sure that it's also culturally inclusive. Because we assume that, the same services does for everybody, or the same approaches does for everybody, or the same, So we need to make sure that we look at it, because it's not one size fits all, for people. It's not. And even for within the community, we need to kind of make sure that people are responding to it. One thing is raising awareness about it and people talking about it. But when people want to talk, they need somewhere to come to talk about it. Like it's, I think raising all the awareness, and then people say, well, where do we go to talk about it? Who do we talk to? You earlier on we were saying, well, where does older travellers go to talk about it? How does younger travellers access it? How are they getting that information? Who's doing that?
It's also part of training, I'd imagine, of what you do, because I've actually seen you doing this throughout the years. You actually not just teach people or talk to people to encourage them to speak, but you also teach them to listen. And I think that's very important in families where mental health issues is to train the person to listen to what's been said and to learn how to approach that best they can.
Yeah, and that's very interesting one. I think for across the board is that a lot of the time we don't listen, whether to what other people are saying. Kind of a lot of the time we're thinking about what we're going to say rather than listening to what people are talking
Loading
about.
Up before the person
reload. Are you listening or reloading?
Actually, I heard that term for you.
Yeah. And it's true, and I mean, like it applies to us all at different times. I'm no different. I mean, you have to kind of actually consciously say to yourself, hang on a second, I need to listen to what this person is saying. Otherwise, we do kind of switch into a mode of kind of just responding.
Well, I came here kind of nervously doing this. I mean, it's the first podcast. I'm sure you're terrified at the time.
Always a little bit anxious, but no.
But coming here, then I had a lot of notes written down, a bit of big notes, and I haven't done anything looking at them. I'm not going to ask them now because I covered most of them, and that's because I felt relaxed when I was talking to you. And some of the stuff we're talking about it's not something that you have to learn so much about because it's something we've already lived. We've seen, we felt, we've experienced. So I think that goes to show you in some ways what the point you're making, I suppose, later on. It's culturally appropriate services. If you apply this comfortability, talking with each other about issues, you would apply that on television, radio, in open spaces, or in a professional capacity. I think the traveller could relate far more to a traveller in terms of their history, their understanding, as opposed to a non-member trying to figure out.
Absolutely. I think you're right. And I think earlier on you said, what are the factors? And I think you were saying, what I was interpreting when you said, what are the factors that contribute to positive mental health? In counselling, certainly, I think it's one of the key factors is the relationship. The therapy, it's called the therapeutic relationship. It means when somebody comes in and they sit down with you, that they're actually, you put them at ease. You're able to they're able to relax. I think that's one of the key things. If they're not able to do that relationship, if that relationship isn't able to be built, then it's very difficult.
People who come to you and speak to you, obviously you are a professional, and this I know myself because I have no problem saying it. In the past, I had gone and spoken to you myself. As you as a psychiatrist and someone who I wanted to talk about.
Psychotherapist.
Sorry.
You're all right.
I haven't even got the Dr. Phil part. But I always respect that, and I think it's something travellers really should at least try it for once. Take advantage of Thomas Mccan, because for one, he is a qualified professional. So if you were to think for a moment that he was going to go on social media an hour afterwards, calling you a mad bastard or something, that's not going to happen. And if you did, you'd lose your job, your career, your reputation, all the good work you've been doing. That doesn't happen in real life, or it doesn't happen with.
No, I mean, I think that I think there's a lot of professions out there that I mean, we have to say that a lot of travellers are using the counselling service, not just me. There's, like, we have a team of counsellors. I think there's about 9 of us at the minute. There's myself as a traveller, and there's another traveller woman who's at maternity leave at the minute.
Brilliant.
And but there's a lot more travellers who are exploring going into that profession at the minute. Now, it's a long road for people, but like other professions, there's travellers that's social workers, travellers that's doctors, travellers that's nurses, travellers that's prison guards. Earlier on, before the interview started, we were talking about prison officers, there's travellers that's guards. However, in some of them professions, it's very difficult for travellers to identify themselves as travellers, because there is a possibility.
Well, this is the unfortunate
that they get a lot of flack over.
One of the things that really annoys me is that you've got a community who's been underserved, socially, economically, knocked their asses pretty much, and then expected to get up, pay fair share of taxes, go out and get employment, and then at the same time for having surveys where 80% of employers said they wouldn't hire a traveller. that in itself is eternal rage, because you're hot in every situation possible. How do you manage that?
Well, and it's an interesting one when you say internal rage, because, some researchers and writers has identified part of kind of the politicization of people as the anger that's there from a lot of people. That's part of the rage and the anger towards the majority community or towards the system that's there. And
I'm going to be open and honest about it. I have that. I had that 43 years of age. I had that 5 years of age.
And a lot of people have that, and it's kind of then trying to kind of constructively kind of channel that anger and rage into something that creates change. And we'll be different in how we do that. Like, some of us...
That rage and anger sometimes can become misguided anger in the wrong direction with the wrong people.
It can explode. It can come out on our own people. And that's one of the traits, or one of the kind of things that people have identified, like Sean Root, for instance, has identified as part of the internalised oppression. For instance,
Sean Root is...
He's a writer and a social psychologist, and he's written a very good book called Internalized Oppression, Leadership and Internalized Oppression. And if you look at that, he identifies that when leaders from within emerge, that the first people to knock them are their own people from oppressed groups. And you see that again and again, so you do. So oppression plays a big part in that. And that rage, and it's kind of understanding the dynamics and how that's kind of impacting on us, and then trying to say, well, look, what do we need to do to change that, or how do we kind of turn that into something positive? And that is part of, channeling it into protests but we need to also manage that because that can explode. It can be destructive as well if people don't understand it.
That's one of the things I think helped me through most of my life, because when I grew up, tough enough terms, not that sort of upbringing. Sometimes it's that kind of parent who had it the worst, because it's the same level of fear, anxiety, that could be one extreme to another. So it's your own personal experience.
Absolutely, and it's all relative. I mean, kind of what happens to different people. Different people will experience that in different ways. So it's all relative to the person that's experiencing it.
It can become very daunting because you're not in and out of different realities. One is the reality you come to the community you come from, and the structure of that culture, so you're familiar with it. Then you go into a different reality, which could be the setting, which settled people, it could be the pub. It's a completely different reality where you are. It's that explosion and fusion of feeling comfortable who you are and where you come from. Venturing anywhere out or beside that, and then with almost a stare shock. Because everything that you thought was normal is normal to you. It's frowned upon, judged on, criticised, demonised, ostracised. I mean, it's an awful experience for young traveller to go through that. Especially teenagers. It's
very difficult. It can be very difficult, and there's two sides to that. One side is, younger travellers, kind of who's, in college or school or whatever, or trying to, kind of fit into that and the challenge of that. And I've worked with younger travellers who was on training schemes, and kind of sometimes the other trainees would know they were travellers, sometimes they didn't know they were travellers, and a newspaper article would appear or whatever, and they'd start having a conversation about it, and they'd be there. And I've worked with, and that's very, very difficult for younger travellers. But the other side of that is sometimes within the community as well, if not only younger travellers, if travellers are going down there trying to do something else, they can also get pulled back as well, in terms of put down or slagged, or and I remember years ago starting out as a community worker.
No traveller would do that.
What are you doing that for? What do you got? Kind of, and even by my own family as well. When you go to college or stuff like that, there's a real challenge in that, because sometimes maybe there's I don't know what it is, but we tend to kind of pull back. We tend to kind of. Maybe there's a bit of a threat in that for people, and now it's not putting that way, but they feel that sometimes it's very difficult to step outside of that. Just to kind of say, listen, that's what I'd like to do, whether it's become a counsellor or whatever.
The thing about it is, it's not. When we see what we see, especially when you get involved with any kind of community group setting, then you become familiarised with other people's issues, their plights, their concerns, their worries, what keeps them awake at night. You see all of that happening. So it's almost of a cruel world that's out there. You know, you realise the history of travellers, how they were treated, the past, how your parents were treated, how your cousins, how your kids might be. And again, feeling that sense of powerlessness.
Yeah, and you do kind of, it's like, you're involved, and I mean, I have children myself, and incidents happen as well, and you think you're moving on and changing that, and then something happens, and that can push you back. And really kind of make you question, what you're doing and stuff.
We spoke earlier on, about the Miscellaneous Act, the trespass law. How you strongly feel to direct as a travellers.
Yeah.
And that.
I'd like someone to prove me wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But if that was one direct attack, let's call it because it was an attack. You simply point out a particular group of people in society.
I have no doubt about it. I mean, that even though the way it's worded is supposed to be for everybody.
Knock-on effects.
Yeah.
And it could be said that it has related to mental health issues. It has created situations of suicide, accidents, left, right,
conflict. I mean, one of the ways of dealing with conflict in the past for travellers was, and maybe other issues as well, was that people would move on. They could move. They could go. They could leave a situation. Now they can't do that. They can't move on from a situation. Years ago, you could go on. You could go somewhere else.
That's it. It's like going to a really big city and get lost in the crowd.
Yeah. If you're stopping somewhere, and camping, I should say, because maybe not everyone will understand stopping.
Yeah.
But if you're camping somewhere, or and you weren't getting on with the people there, you could say, well, listen, we'll move on. We'll go on. And I've seen that happen, and that is no longer the case. You can't move on. If you're on a site, you're stuck on a site. If you move off a site, you're deeming yourself homeless.
I live in a haunted site. It reminds me of almost something you might see in a Japanese war camp / Alcatraz, concrete, grey, dull. Beside a power plant. It's not beside a power plant, it's beside a railway track. It's not beside a railway track, it's on a bog. It's one of the worst locations in the world to put travellers over years.
Oh, God. I mean, I lived in the first traveller site that was developed in Ireland, which was Labrador Park.
Labrador Park.
Yeah. When it was first built, you had to have a barrel top wagon to move on to it.
What do you mean?
You couldn't move on if you were living in a tent. You couldn't move on to the site. You had to have, because the accommodation was supposedly never meant for living in. But the sites that was there, the sites that was built, was a stepping stone to kind of into integration. Well, I call it integration, assimilation really. It was a stepping stone, and they were designed in such a way that they wouldn't be really habitable. They were like some of the way the sites was designed. Was designed that you would like to move into a house. You'd say, of course, kind of if you had this condition.
Even if you're in the town, and even if they took pride and said, look, we have a halting site in the middle of the city. The middle of the city is usually covered up with trees, big, large embankments that you would have to need passage several times before you find it. Yeah, and
there's usually no greenery in the sites. There's usually no playgrounds on the sites. There's usually no community centres on the sites.
Provisions, isn't it?
There's nothing on the site really. I don't say that. I don't knock. Maybe some sites you have all this, but in a lot of sites, in the majority of sites, because we were saying, look, we want to do sessions out in the community around mental health and around other stuff, and we said, right, well, the first thing we have to figure out is, are there facilities on the sites for people to have a meeting on? Now, in most of the sites, no, there's no facilities where people can actually meet, and it's not appropriate to meet in people's trailers or in people's huts or houses or whatever. So we said, right, okay, there's no facilities, and where there was facilities, the few that there was facilities on, where you could meet, somebody outside of the community had the key. Nobody on the community, nobody on the site had the key to the facilities. You had to get somebody from the council, from the local authority.
That's right.
To get the key.
Castlebar. Lad there, heart attack. Ambulance came. Ambulance could not get in onto the barrier.
Yeah.
They had to bring the guy in the back of the car.
Yeah.
To the family had to.
Yeah.
And this has happened several times. Same with fires.
Emergency
services.
Yeah. So the community rarely has very little control, even over the places that they're living in the sites.
Well, I was going to go back to you briefly again, I think it's important. The irony of Peter Casey, briefly, because I remember I mentioned this earlier, just in case people really tuned in to listen to what the irony was.
Yeah.
And like Thomas, I like to be proven wrong. And this is not a generalisation, it's just the irony of it. Is that Peter Casey is British, and Peter Casey comes Protestant background.
Right, okay.
Right? And I just want to put that out there, because I find that kind of a certain irony to that.
Yeah.
But again, that's not against Protestants or British or anything like that. It's just the fact that this guy's posed himself as one of the people.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't have a problem with that so much.
No,
whether he's British or whether he's Protestant. But I'd have a problem more, and it's something I thought should have been kind of focused on a little bit more, is the fact that he isn't tax resident in this country, that he never changed his residency in the States. So he didn't. Although he said his companies pays the same tax, he's not resident here. He's not tax resident here. Now he never changed that. He said, first he said when he got nominated, he changed that. Then that didn't happen. Now I think that's a huge issue.
I would imagine so. Yeah.
That somebody, he didn't have, kind of as somebody who's committed to Ireland or who's committed to the States or whatever, or committed to change, didn't change his tax residency and left it sit there and never changed it, and still hasn't changed it. And I thought that was kind of played down all the time, And it'd be interesting, to do a bit of research in that. If I was a journalist,
I would imagine most people don't like paying taxes, right? No. But at the same time, if you were to ask most of them same people, would you like to see good schools, good health, good infrastructure? He would agree to it.
Yeah, but if
this guy couldn't do that.
He's talking about people on social welfare. He's not paying for the social welfare system. It's the taxpayer that's paying for the social welfare system. I'm paying for the social welfare system. And other workers are paying for the social welfare system. He's not paying for the social welfare system. So it's nothing out of his pocket. Sorry. The thing is, people paying their own way. He's not contributing anything. He hasn't contributed anything to the Irish state in terms of taxes from the business that he's accumulated. And if you look at how tax is paid on the businesses here, there's a lot of questions on how taxes are paid in terms of, how them returns are done, or where the profit is kind of generated, or
subsidies and tax relief.
It'd be very interesting for somebody to have a look at his tax affairs.
Well, we'll put that out there. Now again, I'm going to skip him and leave him. I might even put that part in with the other part later on. But the attack on travellers through the Miscellaneous Act, trespass law, and the effects that had, and resulted in pain, suffering and death. That's unarguable. Yeah. What did the state do some years after, 10 years ago, when they attacked all the travel organisations? Because, again, all travel organisations, right across the board, deal with some of the most vulnerable people, with the lowest life expectancy, highest infant mortality rates, and you name a multitude of other issues. These were the support groups that set up to treat that, right? And they were the same groups that got the worst financial cuts of all organisations in Ireland.
Yeah, the biggest cuts that happened in terms of, when you talk about different communities, was in the travel sector. There's a report, and I'm sure it's online, done by Brian Harvey. It's called Travel to Austerity, and it's about that. And I think in some areas, like for education, I think it was about an 89% cut. And if you look, we're always talking about education as the key to whatever, and education is the, to empowerment, employment, all the rest of it. And yet there was an 89% cut in the education service. If you look at employment, if you look at any of them, if you look at the training centres, now a lot of people didn't agree that there was no employment out of training centres. However, everyone agreed that the money, that the resources that was being put into the training centres should be reorganised in terms of making sure that the resource didn't disappear. 40 million was taken. All the training centres was closed down. There was nothing there done that. The visiting teacher service gone completely. All of that gone, just wiped away. And the visiting teacher service played a very important role in terms of trying to bridge the gap between families, travel families, and the school system. Because like prior to visiting teacher service, a lot of travellers never got homework. I didn't. A lot of other travellers never got out of school ago. But I, even up until quite recently, when I was, travellers didn't get homework. Their mothers and fathers was like my own father, couldn't read or write. Some of them needed support around, kind of homework, all of that. That was completely wiped away, and it was put under this guise of kind of universal equality service, and that doesn't really work if you don't recognise that it's not an equal playing field that we're on there.
Is that something that I actually from where I heard it? I know I remember hearing it some years ago. equal opportunity, right? If you were to take equal opportunities and compare it to what you just said there, like a race, right? And you were to put all different kinds of people, come from different backgrounds, different situations, and put them at the starting line and let them start from there. That's not equal opportunities or equal opportunities. Yeah.
There's an interesting cartoon that I've seen drawn of a number of different animals, a monkey, parrot, a rabbit, and
a fish,
and they all have to climb the tree.
That's right. That was the test.
Yeah,
I think there was a monkey there, so I think he would have done pretty well in that department.
But no, it's not an equal playing pitch, and that's the thing. And there's huge issues. I mean, like we talk about now, the issues of it can even go worse because of some measures that was introduced with a positive lens is actually being used very negative, and that's about the reduced timetables, for instance. If you look at the reduced timetables for children, where children are kind of on a regular basis, sometimes on a daily basis, are kind of their parents are told to come in and collect their children sometimes at 11 o'clock in the morning.
But isn't things like this give people in your profession the worst kind of nightmares? Children taken out of school, singled out, mental feeling different.
Yeah.
I mean, that leads to a whole lot of social issues.
Absolutely. Completely. And it really does, And then if you look at the schools, kind of in terms of supports, if you look at psychological support, there's very little mental health or psychological support for young travellers. There's very, very little. In fact, there's none on the ground. It's an area that I'm very conscious of, that although we kind of do some of the mental health work, it's a drop in the ocean. Like, in terms of younger travellers, there's no real support in terms of young supports for younger travellers in terms of mental health. Most of the supports that they're in settled settings and for the settled community. Now, they had to try and link in with travellers, but they're not travellers.
Have you to keep up with all the latest age groups? So I could come in, I could come and kind of set my ways and have a particular, you could deal with that. And maybe a younger traveller come in and...
diversity. I mean, I think the thing about it is that in every community, regardless of the mental health issue, there's diversity.
Yeah.
You're going to have people, but, even though we're all from the same culture and shared identity,
look at the family culture, traditions,
different ways of dealing with it. You have very traditional families, you have very progressive families. You have you'll have different political. Different political views.
I can easily come in with assumption and say something like, well, you're dealing with travellers, that's a good thing. It's not just dealing with travellers.
No.
Each one has their own individual...
Absolutely, they have their own way of dealing with stuff. Yeah. Each of us has. And the diversity within that. Earlier on, before we started, we talked about, sexual orientation. You're going to have a whole range of different things in the community. That's, and different ways to see the world.
And years ago, and people like this would think, get up there and go for a walk for yourself and get out of that and be fine. And don't be talking. If you don't talk about it won't come around. You also bring it on yourself if you talk about it. This attitude. I think that obviously needs to be dealt with. But again, we can go back to I suppose, your own service. With the kind of people that might be coming to you, male, female, different ages.
Yeah, we get we partner with a family therapy organisation, and they see children in context of family therapy.
Brilliant.
The rest of us see adult travellers, and that's from A&E and upwards, and that's couples and individuals. At the minute, I was just looking at some of the statistics, because we gather all the statistics apart from people's name. We don't, identity. It's just all the statistics. The age range is usually from early to mid 20s to early mid 40s. Although we have a couple of people outside that bracket, that's that. We have 2/3 women. We have a lot more men coming. We always have. So we do, and so we have 1/3 of men nearly all the time, and that goes up more so than falling. So so we've always from day one. We've always had a lot of men.
I'd like to bring on to something else briefly, and I won't keep you too much longer because I know you're a busy day until the more to do a talk.
Yeah, did you have a meeting down there?
Oh, you have a meeting. I want to finish up briefly, but the other one link I want to make is domestic violence.
Yeah.
Is it related? Do you deal with stuff like this?
Yeah, we do. We a lot of our, people can go on the website if they want and have a look, because we put all the figures up and we try and do it in graphs. So that people doesn't have to be, It'd be brilliant at reading to understand the graph. When you look at the graph, you see the different sizes of the pie, whatever. I'd say for people to have a look. We use it out in sites when we do this. We put up a graph, we put up a pie chart, and people can understand that. They don't have to be able to read. This bit of the pie is this size, and this bit of the pie is that size. It's like it makes sense, But the website, the Traveller Counselling.ie, that's the website. Have a look at the statistics. And all the team is
there, and of course, the sounds of what we're talking about in the greater context, it sounds like you need a lot more staff. And I could be wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm not taking anything from you.
Yeah.
But imagine managers who do not want to travel to Dublin, can't travel to Dublin.
No, they can't travel to Dublin. I mean, even within Dublin. I mean, like, if you take from Fingal area, which is Balbriggan, now for people who know Dublin, to Bray, you're talking about, and we're like, to come into Dublin, so one of the things that we place counsellors in local areas in partnership with the local community.
Brilliant.
And that saves, because if you're a mother with a few children, I think it's a bit easier for men, to come, a lot easier sometimes. But if you're a mother with a few children and you're living on a site or in a group housing scheme, and you have to travel from Balbriggan or Bray into Dublin, and I'm really saying Dublin, but if you have to travel from outside Dublin, it's even longer.
Is to talk.
Sit down and
talk.
All
our lives. And then we got to talk about who do we talk about certain things for. So with that, and then when you come out of that, you feel equally as vulnerable, volatile. But all of a sudden, I think for maybe the space of an hour or so, you feel a completely different lift. You felt all that feelings you want to talk about are gone, dissipated. It doesn't mean you're cured. Or it doesn't mean there's to come in waves. We think of mental health illness or mental health.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it, because that's actually, very true. When we, and again, you're right. And this is an experience now, kind of it's up to people themselves to talk about their own experience. We don't say that's people's experience, but a lot of people, a lot of travellers have come to us after 1 or 2 sessions, and they often say to me and to other counsellors, "Is this really what it's about?" Because I had a completely different understanding of this before I came in here.
And
it's very interesting that people's kind of perception of counselling, the counselling that we do, changes completely. Because I was expecting something completely different.
Well, same about the first moment at your office. It was just a small little office with a chair.
Yeah, that's all it is,
All there was a conversation. And no different from what we're doing now. That's essentially, in some ways, what your business is.
That's what it is. It's about kind of creating a space, where people can come in. And when they have something that's a bit heavy, it can be very heavy or it can be a little bit heavy for them to carry at that time. And they just need to sit down with somebody and kind of share that. It's like putting it in the centre between two people and kind of and talking about it. And when people do that, this saying about a problem shared is a problem halved, there's a little bit of truth in that, because when we do, we actually feel like we put it out there, we've lightened the load, we've expressed it, and it does. Now you're right about coming in waves, because kind of as we work on that, we begin to get an insight into what's contributing to that, and how to begin to address that, or we begin to see that coming again, and we say, well, hang on a second.
There's a reason each wave is coming.
Yeah,
so you to figure out
and we can, and we can work through them things, or try and support ourselves in times when we see that the next time that's coming, we might kind of engage with it differently, or see it differently, or kind of.
Well, quite honestly, how I've managed through a lot of the years, I went through several addictions. Alcohol addiction, drug addiction, gambling addictions, you name it. Through hell at times, and the times where you didn't want to get off the ground. I mean, serious. But even with that, with the previous, come all in one night. No matter how much the profession talks to you, how much good advice it gives you, it takes some while to actually sink in, get past all the addictions, learn to manage, deal with them. But what I found best what worked for me was to create a balance of not allowing myself to get too low in the lows and not too high on the highs. In other words, if something wonderful happened, I would embrace it, celebrate it, and like it. But I would not get myself carried away with it, because every high you go with, obviously it's a come down. It's the way it goes.
And it can be like that thing going up and down. It's trying to, not let it go too high or too low.
Like Probably a decent
Joe Joy.
The life support machine, that'll digit him. Because I think it leaves him what we're talking about too for not careful. There is that kind of up and down.
But it's great that you're able to kind of name some of them things, Bernie, because like there's a lot of fear about for people to name them, because when we're able to name something, and it doesn't mean we have to name it for everybody, but like when we're able to kind of to name them things and put it out there, we actually do free ourselves a little bit from, because we feel kind of sometimes prisoners, of them things that we can't say to anybody, that we can't, and there's a lot of control in that some of them issues hold over us when we can't say it to somebody else. We do feel trapped in that sometimes. And to be able to say it, that frees us a bit. We need to do a bit of work on it, but it frees us up a bit, actually, from that.
I think another thing I found absolutely brilliant, and as I said, it was Trish that introduced me to it, and this is going back a couple of years ago, was mindfulness.
Mindfulness, yeah. It's very good.
It's kind of like feel the fear, but do it anyway.
Yeah.
And it's breaking these kind of cycles and learning to understand your own brain, how it works.
Yeah.
How negative thoughts can pop in, how we're angry. I don't say block them out, stop them.
Yeah.
Process them for a couple of seconds and just let them go. The same with the waves, the same with an overcast day. All them will pass too.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff we need to get.
Yeah, mindfulness is really very good in terms of helping people to kind of. It can be very good for de-stressing, for instance. If you're stressed, and it only takes a couple of minutes, and there's a lot of websites that people can look at around mindfulness and that. One of the things that we're doing work with the prisoners, for instance, some of the prisons, and particularly when they're in prison, like it's about saying, well, what can you do yourself in prison, like that you can help your own stress levels or your own mental health levels, and one of the things that we're doing with them, one of the sessions certainly is around mindfulness, kind of in terms of because you only need a small space, you don't need anything else. It's only yourself. But there's some very good sites and there's some good talks online as well, and I would advise people
to have a look. There's various YouTube videos that you can look at. It's there. So you go looking for what you want to go looking for. In the same way when there's some people coming looking for something bad in the travel community, you're going to find it. Because that's what they set off looking for. Yeah. So if people take the approach, look at it, I want to address these issues.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever going to know they're looking at a YouTube video about mental health.
No.
Go up in the toilet, sit down, whatever you want to do, it doesn't matter. Yeah. And just go through it and try to understand it. Some might be heavily jargon, there's other videos that might be easier explanations.
Yeah. But certainly if you put in like mindfulness, for instance, you will get some really good sites that will tell you, and for different people, there's many different ways, but they're very simple ways of doing it. You don't have to, and you can do it.
It's almost like a social, cultural construct. And you take travellers, right? Going back for a very, very long time, they were constantly living in the moment.
They were,
That's not saying they didn't plan ahead, or they weren't thinking about the past, but they were great people to take appreciation of the here and the now and the moment.
Now, taking the time to do that, being able to take the time to do that,
and look like they're really, really enjoying it. So absolutely. Now, I'm going to finish up because I don't know how late you might be.
Well, I better look at the time.
Oh yeah, well look, I want to say it before we go. Thomas Mccan, Irish traveller, psychotherapist, has been through some use. Someone might pick something out of it helpful. Yeah,
and if I was to give any piece of advice, I would say to people, especially, in terms around mental health, is to kind of, look for a bit of support, or if somebody in the family needs support, try and get them the support they need. That's the key. Like, you don't want it to kind of get to a stage where you're in crisis, and that's what we're dealing with at the minute, and we want to work back.
And Tom's not just the person who's going through these issues, these concerns and these worries, but also those around them. Contact services like yourself and say, look, what can I do?
Yeah, absolutely, and people are welcome to contact us. They can ring us up, and as I said, the phone number is there on the website, and people can give us a ring, and they can ask us anything. I mean, like, they can ask us they don't have to come all the time and visit us either. They can say, listen.
They don't feel like that they sign up to a contract.
No, they don't. There's no,
so it's kind of a pay as you go.
Yeah, well, actually, it's free to the clients. So.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I'll let you finish up now, and thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me.
You're very welcome.
That'll be €25, Thomas.
I'll talk to the administrator to send you out
very much, Thomas.
You're very welcome, Bernie.
I hope.